And now to the growing problem of childhood obesity. And according to the experts in this field, we really do have a problem. For instance, right now, 25% of all 9-year-olds are overweight. As part of a strategy to combat obesity, the BAI is currently drawing up a code on the advertising of foods to children, and public submissions to the code closes tomorrow. So what else needs to be done? This report from Ethna O'Brien.
1 in every 4 children in Ireland is now overweight. And 2/3 of children who are overweight today could be obese as adults. The World Health Organization says it's a global epidemic, so unless we take action now and get our children active and healthy, we are condemning them to a future of diabetes, heart disease and cancer. It's 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in Stillorgan, County Dublin, and children are attending their weekly camogie training session. Local parents such as Sheena Horgan have been working with the school to encourage pupils to participate in sports activities throughout the week.
Well, I think we live in a very media, kind of technologically literate society. Our children have a much more sedentary lifestyle, and that has its repercussions. And that would certainly be one of the contributing factors to childhood obesity being on the rise.
According to the World Health Organization, 18% of 9-year-olds in Ireland are overweight and 5% are obese. And girls were significantly more likely to be overweight or obese than boys. 54% of parents of overweight children and 20% of parents of obese children reported that their child was the right weight for their height.
Well, but looking in children, first of all, our levels tend to be higher than many other European countries. And in adulthood, their trend is also higher. Approximately 60% of the Irish adult population today are either overweight or obese, and a comparable figure for Europe would be about 50%.
Doctors say that unless urgent action is taken, overweight children are facing serious health issues.
We're now seeing medical problems that we never saw before in children as a consequence of their weight. So we see things like early diabetes, or actual proper type 2 diabetes, kids who present with high blood pressure as a consequence of their weight. We see kids who have what's called fatty liver. In other words, they get fat infiltration of the liver and can get health problems as a consequence of that. Girls with polycystic ovary disease affecting their fertility.
Irish children watch more television than the rest of Europe. 51% of children aged between 6 and 12 watch between 1.5 and 3 hours per day, compared to an EU average of 40%. And Irish children spend less time on average on physical education in school. The average time spent for Irish children is 54 minutes per week, whereas the EU average is 109 minutes per week. And outside of school, for some, facilities are limited.
We live very near the city, and there's very little in the way of kind of casual, community-based sports facilities for children. And I think for girls there's a huge issue around sport as well. I think it's really important that more effort is made to encourage girls, young girls, young women from toddler size up, to get involved, whatever kind of sport activity outdoors.
And with temptation all around, parents say it's a battle every day to get their children to eat healthy food.
The outside influences, it's very hard. I find my children have far too many treats, so it's trying to cut down and I suppose what you provide is what they're going to eat.
Amid concerns about outside pressures, the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland today has its closing date for the public to make submissions to its proposals to ban certain foods high in fat, salt and sugar during children's programmes.
We are kind of looking at the evidence. We're looking at what works best in other countries in terms of marketing and so on. And we would be very keen, for example, that there would be a watershed with regard to the types of foods that are advertised, particularly for the crisps, sweets and confectionery.
But the food industry is worried that the BAI draft code will define foods as healthy or unhealthy based on food weight rather than portion size.
We're deeply concerned about certain aspects of the BAI proposal. They're planning to introduce a nutrient profiling model which we believe is deeply flawed and unscientific. And at its heart, it is classifying food on the basis of 100-gram portions, which is totally irrelevant to what people actually consume. And as a result, it's classifying foods as either good foods or bad foods, and some foods are going to be discriminated against.
Whatever the BAI decide for their new code, parents say that banning ads on Irish TV may not be enough.
The figures are based on Irish television. Our children, we're between the UK and the US, we have a humongous amount of media channels, and our children consume an awful lot of media, and it's not just the Indigenous Irish media. So we can ban it, but it is a blip in the ocean. It will not have the effect that I think they would like it to have.
Now health officials are so concerned that they are exploring the option of weighing primary school pupils.
I think it's a very good idea. The reason why that may be helpful is that if you can catch it earlier, you can intervene earlier and therefore try and prevent the progression and the increasing severity of obesity. Oftentimes when we see kids here in this clinic, they're often very overweight, significantly obese, and it's often very difficult at that point to make changes.
But some parents are worried. They say that the plan could do more harm than good, giving children food issues for life.
We talk about energy in, energy out in the school here, so we deliberately don't use the word calories. If we start talking calories and weight with children, they are going to have negative associations, which I do think will have long-standing repercussions.
But the obesity crisis has been on the public agenda for years. In 2005, a special task force on obesity made over 90 recommendations, but only about 20% of them have been implemented. Last September, Minister James Riley appointed a new special action group on obesity called SAGO, which promises not to be just another talking shop.
We know what needs to be done, and the focus very much on the special action on obesity is on implementation and action. A lot of attention has been paid to the issue of calorie posting in restaurants. So the Minister, on that basis, wrote to fast food chains kind of a number of months ago. We got very good reaction to that. We've now just completed a consultation with the Food Safety Authority, and the results of that will be available over the coming weeks. Our focus now will be on implementing that on a voluntary basis.
But relying on goodwill is not enough. Plans for labelling and taxing of certain foods have yet to materialise. So the question remains, will the government want to take on the special interest groups and make meaningful changes that might be costly for business but could benefit our children?